1-month cabling, in February we passed a resolution supporting the Second Amendment, affirming the right to keep and bear arms, and saying that we will not support or endorse any candidate that seeks to infringe the rights of the American people.
Especially Republicans.
Yes. Well, technically we can't endorse anyone who isn't a Republican.
But whether you be a Democrat or a Republican, the definition of that is sometimes hard to define.
Yes.
And I have a couple of my friends that want to say, okay, what we're going to do is give you the muzzle loader with the rod and the powder, and you could have that. That's the Second Amendment.
That's Ed Meyer.
Is that Ed Meyer?
Yeah.
I knew somebody said it.
Yeah, he wanted the scary thing.
Where do you draw a line? What do you think is a line?
I really don't think there is a line, simply because...
So you think a bazooka would be legit?
Well, I actually go in the other direction. The Second Amendment doesn't say firearms, it says arms. The Second Amendment is more about swords, historically. Because if you look under British law, which is what we were coming from, only nobles could have swords in public. The Second Amendment was about not having nobility in this country. It was about saying the people are equal. There is no ruling class. Everybody's the same. If you think about it, the argument,
But they had women. But they had women and African Americans at that point. They decided weren't.
Well, I was just having that conversation today with somebody. So if you look at our history of voting rights, yes, we started off with We started off with white male property owners over 21 could vote. And when you look at women's suffrage, and the argument was, well, you based your voting rights on natural law. You said our rights came from our Creator. And you said that all men have the right to abolish a government and start a new government. And then you're saying that women aren't part of mankind. And that was basically the most coherent argument out of women's suffrage. When we started the, obviously after the war between the states, when slavery was ended, same thing, the same argument was there. But if you look historically, even during the drafting Constitution, there was a debate on ending slavery in 1774.
Adams was.
Yep, there was a big thing about that. But again, it broke down.
Again, it was the South. It was, Jefferson.
It would have almost been prophetic had they realized the lines that were being drawn. We had guys from Massachusetts that wasn't industrial yet, but they were in the beginnings of learning about that. But they had gone from being an agrarian society, so slave labor wasn't really something they were thinking about.
Right.
Which I've always wondered why. I always wondered why the factory owners didn't just, why they weren't more in favor of slaves.
Well, it was just the evolution of it all, and the way the Northeast grew and the South grew, and it was part of the trade.
Right.
It was part. You know what? If you got a ship, you look into. And by the way, these aren't even American ships. These are foreign ships. So you want to find a way of bringing some cargo and taking cargo back.
Right.
That had as much to do with a slave, and that was down south because they wanted. There was a crop that they needed. So a lot of that revolved around just trade routes and policies.
Right.
But we've evolved.
But I always think it's funny that you look at the states that were divided at the time were the same states that 100 years later were divided.
Well, again, you're talking about states' rights.
Right. Well, yeah, but you're also talking again the cultural.
By the way, I really am not a big states' rights guy. I'm a Hamilton kind of a guy.
Okay.
Okay. And Franklin was the big broker there. Okay, he brokered this stuff. But one thing I will say, there were a lot of things that the Founding Fathers spoke to about foreign powers and control and trade and all those issues that they were wary of, that it seems like whether they be the Republicans in the South or Democrats in the North that have seemed to have forgotten what the Founding Fathers were saying.
Yeah, they definitely have.
So, I mean, I may disagree with you on some of the stuff is interpreted, but clearly, if we look back, and like I said, if you look at Teddy Roosevelt, this is a guy who believed that you could not let these corporations become so big that they would knock everybody out. This is a great city down here, but take a look at it. I grew up down here, right? This is not the city I grew up in.
No.
We used to have local hamburger joints.
Yep.
Now you got to go to McDonald's. If you want to get a hamburger, where do you go? You got to go to McDonald's.
Right.
Where do you find any other place? So we've knocked all those small business guys out, and we put highways through.
Yep.
And instead of people living here, working here, they're all up here driving back to where they came from because somebody else is moving out of here, working somewhere else, making money, and then coming back to live here. It's the most insane policy I've ever seen.
There's just a thing now before our city board of representatives to close this road right here.
Now, by the way, you work here. Do you live here?
Yep.
Let me say this. You are a better city employee because you live here.
Well,
I believe that because I think not only you work here, but you live here
I was born
and you
here,
have pride
I grew up here.
By the way, my goal would be to have everybody live as close to where they work. It's good for them.
I would say it's good for you, but I don't like residency requirements. They've been
I don't either. I didn't say mandate.
No.
I didn't. By the way, I just so you know, I'm the one who fought. It used to be they were allowed to have residency mandated and get back under Bill O'Neill. We repealed that.
Okay.
And I was the president of the AFLCIO, and I get the pen, which O'Neill signed the repeal. Because I'll tell you what, I don't believe anybody should be mandated to live anywhere. Because I don't want the company store and like with the mines. Okay.
Right.
But what I'm saying to you is it's desirable, and I should make it possible for you.
Well, if you look at some of the programs like the Chaffa loans and that whole program from years ago.
That's government done.
Right.
Right.
And that's why, it's not a perfect solution. But it was an interesting process. The idea that they would pay municipal employees or not pay them, but they would give them a better mortgage rate and building grants if they buy a dilapidated house in the town they worked in and rebuild it.
Well, I had four sisters. I lost one and a brother, and I believe we were stronger because of our unity and because of our numbers. I believe that if I'm going to fight the guy across the street, I'm surely better off with three of you joining me in that fight. I do not believe that I have to prove myself as the rugged individual to go fight a gigantic army across the street single-handedly. So therefore, you can disagree with the policies and what's happening with your government, but let me just say this. You need government.
Well, yes.
Because government is nothing but an extension of when we came out of the caves and met other tribes and had neighbors and created communities, and a lot of it was born out of a church, which was the system here. Every church on the green, that became the center of that town.
Some of our state borders are because of where the different churches were.
All of them.
Connecticut was a constant.
Well, I live in Clinton. They're celebrating the 350.
Okay.
So what happened was it used to be Killingworth. And then the people who lived up in the farms up north decided they didn't want to come all the way down to the shoreline and have to go to church. They created their own church up there, therefore spun off, and we had Clinton. Okay. So, but that doesn't mean that I want, to have a theocracy, but I tell you what, we've evolved. And when we look at other countries or other, groups that are trying, we should understand, when we first started, the challenge that we had in the experiment. And by the way, we're in our adolescence as a nation.
Yes.
We are still in our adolescence growing.
I actually talk online with a gentleman from Scotland. I've never met him, but he's on a couple of forums I'm on, and he likes to throw it out that some of his traditions in his family are older than some countries.
Yeah.
And he means that directly at us.
What we need when we're still like I was with my father bought boxing gloves, and I had two older sisters, and he bought the boxing gloves and he threw them in the room and says, "Okay, go at it." And as we are as adolescents in this country, politically, we're still in that growing stage. And the only thing is I hope is everybody will at least take some time and listen to the opposition as I've done with you, and I respect you listening to me. And then maybe, we don't have to agree on anything. But maybe we agree it's not a bad day today. And hopefully we can get home safe. Yours is going to be closer ride than mine.
I didn't like the stimulus money, but I'll say this. I never understood why there wasn't something built in that said anybody working on these infrastructure projects didn't have to, the companies and the employees didn't have to come from within 50 miles of the project.
Well, let me say this to you too, and I'll agree with this. And I say it for camera even. I said one thing I could never understand, and I supported a stimulus. But when it came time for the stimulus, and when we had people that were fighting that they didn't want to make sure that the bridges that we were building was going to use American steel.
Right.
I don't understand what we had in our mind about having a stimulus for the sake of stimulus, which I agree with, but I don't believe in bringing in foreign steel to stimulate my economy.
The goal behind the stimulus was to create American jobs, so we're going to go buy the steel in another country.
But what happened was that was some concessions you could take a look at.
Yeah.
And remember those guys too, all right?
Yeah.
All right, good to see you.
Good to see you.
Brother. By the way, I represent you too. Even when you disagree with me. Okay, guys. Happy hunting.
Take care.
By the way, nice artwork.
Thank you.